I'm certainly no stranger to Atlantic City, no stranger to Boardwalk Hall. I mean, I wonder, is this kind of fun for you to be back here doing this week?
It is. There's a little bit of nostalgia, you know. I fought, Cerrone down here, but that was at one of the hotels and the casinos that I hadn't fought at. Being able to fight in the Boardwalk Hall, I've had a few fights there, and it's pretty cool. I haven't been able to go over there yet, but tomorrow when we do the ceremonial weigh-ins and stuff like that, I'll get to go over there and kind of relive it a little bit. It's been a part of my career that I haven't really thought about, because for me it's like whatever, wherever I'm fighting, I'm fighting. But kind of this week I've been having all these memories of some of the fights in the past.
You think when you walk over there for ceremonials, do you think you'll soak it in a little bit and it'll all come rushing back to you a little?
I think so. I definitely think so. And even now, just thinking about it, I fought in one of the smaller rooms a couple times, and that's where I had my my debut. Just some really cool memories.
Fought Frankie there as well.
Yeah, fought Frankie there.
I mean, can you take yourself back to that point? I mean, did you ever in a million years think, now here later, you two guys are two veterans of the sport, two legends of the sport, doing it. I mean, did you ever imagine this was possible?
I did. When I was coming up and before I even fought Frankie, the UFC finally brought back the lightweight division, and BJ Penn was the man, and it was like, all right, well, I'm training to fight him. Every day that I'm on the mat, I'm training to fight the best guy on the planet at the weight class. And I expected to be here, but it is pretty cool. Like Frankie and I, we were supposed to wrestle in college. We didn't. I ended up missing weight by 0.2.
Oh, wow.
It was the only time I've ever missed weight. And we then to see him coming up fighting while I was fighting, it was like, oh man, like we're gonna get our opportunity, and after a few fights, we did. And sorry about that.
All right. It's better you than one of us.
Yeah, they know I'm in the middle of this. And we got the chance. It was, I think, both of our sixth fight, and he got the call up right after that, and I had to fight on the local levels for a little bit longer, and both been in here since, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing to share that with somebody, and have two paths that have been so closely related, and and then we trained together for a while, and just to kind of share that with somebody, it's pretty neat.
You're setting a little bit of history. I mean, you and Mike Bisping are going back and forth, most UFC appearances in history. I mean, does that, obviously he may be done, it sounds like, so you should pass him. I mean, does that mean something to you? I mean, longevity like that?
I mean, the longevity does. Yeah, it hasn't been easy, man. It definitely has been easy, and for me to, I'm also the guy that hasn't pulled out of a fight. So there have been those those ones that where it's definitely hard, definitely difficult training camps, and I fought injured, I fought ill, I've dealt with things that some of my peers might not have, on fight night, and sometimes I was able to overcome them, sometimes I wasn't. But yeah, getting to 30s, I think it's a mark that I don't see a lot of fighters that are coming into the sport now and coming to the UFC now getting to that point, just because the game has changed, and the way that careers are kind of being structured has changed. So it's cool. This should be my 30. Like I wanted to fight back in February. I would have liked to fought on the Texas card, and then I could have fought on this one. I sure as hell wouldn't have turned it down. So
yep.
I'll get there. It's not super important to be the first one, but that's another cool thing. To share something with Bisping. I mean, he's been in the UFC a lot longer than I have. The dude's he's a future Hall of Famer, and to be right there with him is pretty neat.
Well, last thing for me, I wonder, these matchups, you're fighting a guy who says he watched you growing up, you know what I mean? And everybody you fight, I think, is going to be like that. They saw you growing. I mean, is that difficult for you? Because now you're having to shift your focus to guys that you might not know that much about, you weren't following. When you talk about like a BJ Penn or something, that's easy to get hyped for. But is it tough to get hyped for these, quote-unquote kids that you really know much about?
Not at all, man. A fight's a fight, and I approach everyone the same way, and they're all important. And every time I'm training, I'm basically just training to get myself better, and that's the way it's always been. It's never been about the guy who's standing across from me on fight night, because I've had that change many times, and gone from fighting different styles, different body types, orthodox to southpaw, and vice versa. And hell, my first fight, I had 5 different opponents until we finally were able to get one that didn't pull out. So that's just the way that it goes. But I'm going to fight whoever steps in front of me. And Dan is he's a talented fighter, coming off some really good wins, and he's very dangerous. He is a very dangerous guy, and I'm sure as hell not looking past him. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to fight my hardest, and I'm feeling good. I had a really good training camp, and I'm hoping that everything stays the way it has been, and everything goes well, and I get to perform and show you guys that I'm still capable of some magic inside the octagon.
Now, Jim, obviously going into this, he is kind of a guy on the rise. You're the veteran at the top. I don't want to say your back's against the wall. I think with your stature in the sport, you can survive 0-3, 0-4. But does that add a little bit of pressure for this?
There's always that little bit of pressure coming off a loss. This is the first time I've had 3 in a row, and it's something I never planned on. And there's always pressure. There's always pressure to get back to it. And, I can't stand the phrase, you're only as good as your last one, because that's bullshit. You can put together a career, and it's one night, it's one moment in time. A 15-minute stretch, or even a 25-minute stretch of a fight is nothing. It's nothing compared to what you could have done in the past in here. And I'm like I said, I'm not a big fan of that phrase being thrown around. I think it kind of devalues us as fighters, and as martial artists as well, and what we've put into it, and what we've put into to get to this point. I've been training in MMA for almost 13 years now, and was wrestling since I could walk. So there's been a lot of time spent on the mats to develop that, and to kind of sell myself short and say, well, I performed like shit my last fight, so I must be a shit fighter. I think that's bogus. But there is a little bit extra, But to go out and to, I'm gonna fight on Saturday. I'm gonna put it on the line. I'm gonna fight as hard as I can, and if I see an opportunity to finish him, and it's reckless, I'm still gonna go for it, because that's me, and I'm not gonna fight that. I'm not gonna change who I am. I'm not gonna go out and I'm not gonna fight conservative, because win or lose Saturday night, I want to be able to satisfy myself with that performance, and going out and just grinding it out, staying on top, not really causing any damage. That's not my style of fighting. It's not something that I'm going to look at and be like, well, that's a good win. So there is the pressure, but I'm also Jim Miller, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and there are certain things that I'm not gonna let that pressure get to me, basically.
Now, at 34, you're not exactly the oldest guy around, but you do have the longevity and the battle scars and everything that go with it. What keeps you going at this point in your career?
There's a huge love of the competition, man. I get super excited. A couple weeks out of a fight, I'm just ready to go. It doesn't really matter even where I am in camp. I'm just ready to go. I'm ready to finally step inside the octagon and fight. And this is about 6 months in between, these fights, and I hate that. I'm not a big fan of taking this much time off, and unfortunately, this wasn't my choice. I kind of got pushed back, until they were coming to the area here. So, yeah, it's. I don't even know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought.
But the motivation, yeah.
The motivation, yeah, it's still there. The joy and the love of training, the love of fighting and competing, and it's at the same time, it's also a job. It's how I provide for my family, and I gotta do that as well. So you sometimes that has been the motivation when I have been banged up, when I have been hurt, and it's like, well, you know what, you decided to make your living as a fighter. You got to fight sometimes, even when you're banged up. So,
From what I recall, your fight against Frank, it was the first time your grandparents had ever saw you fight,
yes.
and they weren't too pleased with the way the crowd reaction went.
Yeah, that was. Of course, I didn't have to deal with any of it because I was in the back. But my gym at the time had closed down a couple weeks earlier. The training camp for that one, I barely had anybody to train with. I trained with Dan a little bit when I first got the fight. He had cracked a rib, and of course, the first sparring session, I forgot about it, and I punched him in the body and hurt him, and so he was out. So then it was like I had like two 17-year-old kids that were training, a 300-pound purple belt, a blue belt, a couple random guys, and at that time he was fighting for Rhino. They had like 60 fighters. So when it came time to sell tickets, I didn't really have anybody. With the gym closing down, it was like my main guys were in my corner, and then I think I sold like 12 tickets, something like that. It was like my family, my parents, my grandparents, and yeah, it was 12 for me and about 1,500 for him. So it was there were all sorts of chants and stuff like that, and my grandmother, she started yelling at some of the kids, and, "Shut up, old lady," back and forth, and yeah, it was.
From what I remember, they never came back, did they? Did they ever go to a fight after
No, they never came back to a fight after that.
You fought a lot of